Hello, welcome back to China Manufacturing Decoded from Sofeast. It's Adrian here from the team. Renaud's with me today, and it's episode 171. Now, you'll remember a few weeks ago, perhaps you might have got an email from Renaud, and he was asking if any of our listeners and our readers had questions that we might feature on the podcast. And several of you got back to us with some good questions. So, Renaud, you're going to answer a few questions today.
Hey, yeah. So we have 4 questions that we're going to try and cover today. So they're on different topics, right?
Yeah.
New product development, how to buy certain types of products, how to check up on the manufacturer, and something about quality and reliability. So it's really it's quite a diverse set of topics here. But yeah, it's good from time to time to ask, hey, do you have some questions? And then we get a few questions here and there, and provides a bit of variety on the podcast. So
yeah,
the first one, do you want to read it?
Yes, okay. So our listener sent in, they said, I'm quite new to manufacturing. I've got a new product which is presently in prototype, and I'm hoping to find a manufacturer in China. I've got a question about one of the components in my product, which is a GSM module. How do I get a manufacturer that can help integrate the GSM module into the complete product? So that's making the GSM unit be joined to the product as a complete unit. For now, it's separate, and I want it to be fully functional inside the unit. So yeah, quite a long question, but I think we get the gist.
Right. So basically, you get a prototype, okay, but it's definitely not a final prototype because you're not happy about it, right? So you have an early prototype of the product that works together with a GSM module that's external. Okay, I'm not going to go into the details of like technically, blah, blah, blah. I would need to have some people from the engineering team. But this is more at the level of how to think about this, right? Mm-hmm. So the first question is, okay, is it really a problem that the GSM module is external, right? Because if it's external, maybe some of your customers, I have no idea who's going to buy this or use this product or whatever. We don't have more context here, right? But in some contexts, maybe in a B2B setting, maybe in some cases, users will already have their own GSM module. So in that case, don't make the product more, more expensive by integrating it. Let them reuse it. Okay, but what I'm guessing is it's not the case. So it's not convenient if an external GSM module has to be used. Okay, so if really that's a problem, and really I that's an important question, is it a problem first? Because your version 1.0, you want to keep it simple. You don't want to try to aim for very big volume, let's go mainstream and everything right away, except if you're really targeting just a niche. But if it's a relatively large market, your version 1.0 is not going to go mainstream, it's not going to go, it's going to be limited for sure, right? In ways that mainstream buyers will not be very happy about. Okay, so that's a fact. So your V1.0 is there to learn, to get feedback from the market, to demonstrate to yourself and your investors that you are doing okay. Your product is getting some traction with a fraction of the market, and that's sufficient. And you're learning, and you have a good plan for having your version 2.0 be better in ways that are important and that really unlock the keys to a big portion of the market. That's the way to think about it. That's the way Tony Fadell in Build, the book Build, that's the way he explains it, and I like it. And I've been telling our clients since then, that's really the way to think about it. Okay, and we mentioned it in a previous episode of this podcast, I believe. So the first question is really important. Okay, then let's assume, it really has to be integrated. Okay, then do you want to redevelop a GSM module? No, you want to use something that's already there, already developed and pre-certified, and so you just take it and bring it into the assembly of your final product, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, okay, so I come back to the question, how to get a manufacturer in China to do that and everything. So I understand from the question that you have a prototype on your side and you have not really zeroed in on a specific manufacturer. Okay. In that case, you have several approaches here. Okay. You have the approach where you try to find a manufacturer that has very specific experience in that product category and will tell you, yeah, we already integrate GSM module into this kind of product. We know how to do that. We have a good one, and right? We already know everything that needs to be done. We understand, okay, it can be fast. There's some downsides with this type of manufacturer. Even if you sign a good contract with them, in many cases, they will kind of consider it's their product. They will put it in their showroom. They will show it to their other customers. You go into the typical Chinese approach, where it's sort of not really your product, is their product, and they resell it and they make more money from your product, not just from your orders. That's a risk that is really not negligible. Now, if they see that the product is going to be small volumes, and if you know the market, if you know the niche, if you know it's going to be, orders of hundreds of pieces, 1,000, 2,000 pieces, not very high volumes and not extremely expensive, well, then the risk is lower. Okay. Now, if they start to see that you're ordering 5,000 pieces, 8,000 pieces, 10,000 pieces, boom, 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 you have a lot of demand and you're struggling to catch up on demand and fulfill on the demand. Well, then they're going to think, hey, this is a winner. I get to do something with this product, right? The temptation is going to be huge. Okay. So that's a downside of that approach. Another approach, which I guess is the one you would favor if you already did prototyping, if you already designed the product and prototyped it on your side without working with a manufacturer, is you want to keep things in your hands. So you might want to start working just on identifying the suppliers, the key suppliers. Okay, and you don't need a manufacturer for that, or you work with a contract manufacturer, and they can sell you this sort of service. But otherwise, typical Chinese manufacturers will not want to just do sourcing for service. They will want to keep the information private to themselves, so that you have to keep working with them, right? So that's the problem. So either you work with a service company, or you do it yourself, or you work with a contract manufacturer. You identify the key components, including a GSM module that can be integrated within your product, that is pre-certified, and so on and so forth. If possible, also ask for reliability test results, okay? Because you don't want that one module to trigger a failure of the entire unit. This is a very common scenario, actually. Several of our clients had this kind of problem. So watch out for it. Okay. Then once you have identified the key components, then you get them, and if you already did prototype on your side, well, do another prototype with all of that, with the GSM module in, internal, inside your product. All right. And then work on finding a contract manufacturer that will, clearly sign a contract that it's all your intellectual property and so on and so forth, and will put together sort of the final prototype pre-tooling, before the tooling is done. If you have a custom enclosure, for example, in plastic, right? Very, very common for electronic products. So they will do sort of the final prototype, or let's say the next round of prototype, and then after that, the final prototype. So they get familiar also with the product and how it's going to be assembled and so on and so forth, right? So that's what I would suggest. And then, of course, you do integration testing and everything with the GSM module. You get the prototypes, you do some user testing and so on and so forth. The way it's supposed to be used by the final users where they will use the product. And then, of course, as I mentioned, maybe tooling, if necessary, some certifications, again, depending on where you set it. For example, FCC, if there's a RF functionality, if you set in the US, CE marking under probably several directives, if you set in the European Union, and so on and so forth. Okay, so that was really an answer at the level of the strategy to adopt here. I hope that's useful. I think that's what the reader, that's what the listener was looking for here.
Yeah, I think so. And if you're listening and that does remind you of your question and you want more information, do get in touch. We'll be happy to help. But yeah, that's good. That's good feedback. And yeah, I can understand why you would suggest the contract manufacturer route is going to be more appropriate in this case. So yeah, that's a good one. So let's go on to the second one then, shall we?
Sure. So what did the listener ask for?
They said that their challenge is capital and support on how to import goods like electronic devices like laptops, phones, and accessories.
Yeah, there's a lot of people trying to get in the business of importing very mainstream, sort of consumer electronics like phones and laptops and accessories. Usually, I would advise against that. Usually, it's about picking something already existing, and private labeling it, just putting the logo on it and assuring the distribution of it. The problem is you're going to be fighting directly against all the Chinese sellers.
Yeah.
And when it comes to phones and laptops, I mean, they're all over the place. These are big markets with a lot of money. So they have very well set up, channels to reach the end customers. And if you are going to sell undifferentiated products like these, and be competing against other Chinese, companies importing it into your country and selling it, you can't win on price usually. Okay, you will not be the cheapest one, and you will have an undifferentiated product. So usually, I really don't recommend doing that. You got to think of a proper strategy, right? So either you target a specific niche and you market the products in a specific way, and you have access to that niche where other companies typically don't really have good access to that niche of the market, right? That's one way. When you start, is probably the best way. Okay. Then if you start to make some money on this, then maybe you go for a strategy of having more differentiated products. So then when you start to buy a certain volume, but the problem with these products is you buy 1,000 mobile phones, smartphones, or 1,000 laptops. You might think, hey, that's a lot of money, but to the manufacturer is peanuts. They don't even want to hear from you, right?
Yeah.
A mobile phone manufacturer in Shenzhen doesn't really want to hear about purchase orders of less than 5,000 pieces. Okay, so that's why I usually don't recommend doing that. Now, there's all kinds of suppliers, and by the way, those that you will find on Alibaba and so on, they will tend to be crappy. They will tend to come with a product that's not good, but you don't really have visibility because it's their product, with their chipset. They have done the R&D to make it all work together. They have done some of the testing. They've been selling it to their other customers. They're not going to open up the kimono. You will not see what's really in that product. in detail, okay, and the firmware and so on and so forth. You will not see that. So you will have to rely on them. You will have to really basically trust them. And that's where a lot of the issues come up. And I'm not going to be, I'm pretty serious here. I'm pretty sure that in most cases, when someone goes to Shenzhen and buys some of these smartphones and laptops, they buy it from a third tier or fourth tier manufacturer, right? Because again, they don't give $1 million POs, right? So they don't deal with the first tier ones, and they really get crappy products, and there's a lot of reliability issues, and they get cheated. I mean, we've been doing inspections, like in the Shenzhen area for 17, 18 years now. We've seen so many cases where people get cheated out of, it's not the right the right MCU, or the memory is not what they paid for, it's not the right screen, it's not whatever, right? And there's dead pixels on so many screens and so on and so forth. We've seen all of this. We've seen all the problems, and we've heard from people also who ask us to do failure analysis. Hey, I get these 20,000 laptops that I sold through a contract to such and such whatever agency or company, and already 25% of them are not working. How come? What's going on? So we see the issues, right? So this is a very high risk kind of approach. The listener also mentioned accessories. If you find, it's very wide, right? But if you find some accessories that are not very easy to find, in your country, and that makes sense for a certain use, and you see you can sell it, and so this is probably a better way to start buying products from China, right? Don't go into smartphones and laptops, basically.
Yeah,
that's really
you got a lot less.
Yeah,
you got a lot less risk with the accessories for sure.
Right.
The listener seems to be suggesting they're starting out. I mean, they mentioned capital, so I'm going to assume they're looking at doing this on a lower cost basis. So your point about starting small, I mean, unfortunately, trying to start small when you're talking about importing laptops and phones, you've just got enormous risks there, don't you?
Yes, and we see it again because we check these products, either before shipment or after that when there's a lot of failures. That's where our clients come to us and say, hey, we have a problem. What is it, right? And typically for laptops and smartphones, you don't want to develop your own from scratch, except if you really want to do something really big, right? There was a video going around, so I think I watched it 1 or 2 weeks ago, about that company. I forgot the name. It's a weird name, but they're launching a new smartphone. Actually, they started with earbuds, and now they're doing a smartphone, and they invested something like $40 million in their model of smartphone. Okay, really designed more or less from the ground up. Okay, that's what it takes to get a world-class mobile phone, designed, properly certified, etc., right? With the tier 1 or tier 2 manufacturer, right? That's what it takes. You can join this game, basically. And same thing for laptops, same thing for tablets, right? Forget about these things. You're not going to have a highly differentiated product as your own product. It's just not going to happen. That's the sad truth about it. So go with accessories. Start with simple accessories, off the shelf, private label them. Then as you get to know the market and you learn how to sell to the market and you see what the market needs, work on developing your own accessories. It's much, much simpler usually. Don't go with the most complicated ones, but it's much, the entry is much cheaper than smartphones and laptops. That's really my advice here.
Yeah, good answer. Yeah, I like it. Sound advice there. Okay. The third one, so third question, I think this is very topical at the moment. Certainly, if we're looking at China, where I think many listeners probably are aware that the economy in China is not what it was, as I suppose it is in many countries. So this particular listener asked, how do I know if my manufacturer is going to go bankrupt soon?
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking these kinds of questions actually since maybe 2019 when the Trump tariffs came into effect and some big orders from some big American companies started to go, to Vietnam and some other countries. And people were wondering, what about my Chinese manufacturer? Their main business was, I guess, was from the US. And then some people find out, they lost their number one customer. Ouch. What's going to happen to them? I rely on them. Maybe they have my tooling, they know how to make my product. I send them money to make my productions. They have my products until they ship out. What's going to happen here, right? It is a bit scary when you see that, actually. And so how to know? There's several ways. Okay. First, some due diligence can, in some cases, uncover their balance sheet and their profit and loss statement at a high level, right? You're not going to have all the small details about all the individual accounts and everything, but you get a good summary, okay, a high level view of it. So if you see on the balance sheet they have a lot of debt, the P&L, they're losing money, right? If you see that, it's probably worse than that, meaning that they probably also owe money to their suppliers in a way that is not declared officially. That's rather common. They might have borrowed some cash from whatever, the local mafia or something. That happens. Okay, you can see these things sometimes. Okay, and it's not very expensive, right? We do these kind of things for $200, so it's not very expensive. But looking into it and getting that, and I'm not exactly sure, maybe 60-70% of cases, we get a pretty good overview of their finances. So that helps, but it's looking backward, right? It's not looking forward. What really helps is actually going there from time to time and seeing what's going on. And if you cannot take a plane and come and see them at least twice a year, you need to work with a company on the ground to go and have a look from time to time and coming back to you, right? You can, I know with COVID it's become much more common for people not to come very often, but before that I saw a very clear relationship between, this company, they send people to their manufacturers every 3 months, boom, 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 very regular. And they have a sit down with management and they walk around the factory. They have a few data to give feedback to them and everything. These companies tend to do better versus, I haven't been there for 2 or 3 years. I don't even know, how they're doing now. Well, that is what I hear from companies that have a lot of trouble, right? So this has been very, very clear for a long time. In China, you need face-to-face meetings. Otherwise, you're really taking risks. Okay. Yeah. Now, COVID, 3 years without going to China, or 3.5 years for some people. We've seen a lot of cases where the relationship really turns sour, goes down, and they have to work with a backup, or they keep suffering all kinds of issues from the manufacturing side. Well, what do you do? Again, you fly there, you see them now, and you cultivate a backup, right? So all of that to say, how are you going to see if they lost a lot of business? Well, you have to go there, and then you're gonna have to remember, hey, before they were on the 7th, 8th, and 9th floor, and now they just have the 7th floor where they have the office and a little bit of assembly and packing.
Yeah.
They don't show me above. I got to ask for it. Oh, they rented it out to somebody else or something. Okay, so what is that telling me? I mean, obviously, either they were very ambitious in their plans, but last time you have to remember, was it busy or not, right? Or was it already completely empty? Well, that means something. You need to ask them about, their number one customer and number two customer. Even if you don't know the details, you need to have an idea, right? So, yeah, basically, if you see they lost a lot of business, that's high risk. In that case, what do? You send an advance payment for production, one at a time. You see that they go, you never send them too much money at the same time, because that's what creates the incentive for them to start acting unethically in a very, very short-term manner, as sometimes Chinese suppliers can do. And you don't send money before Chinese New Year. Like, you don't want them to owe you anything at Chinese New Year, because that's the typical time where they close and they sort of run away without paying the wages and the suppliers and everything. Okay. These are some simple rules of thumb. Also, you might want to cultivate a backup. If you rely on them too much and you see they lost a lot of business, well, you got to be prepared. What if they close, but it takes 6 months or 8 months to redevelop your product? Yep. How about you start now? And yeah, it's not very nice to your supplier. You will need to give an order to the backup from time to time, right? So otherwise they will forget about your product, right? So it means less business for your current supplier, but you have to protect your business, right? So that's what I would say here. How to know? Do some due diligence without them knowing, right? Go on site to have a look, and yeah, just talk to them. How's everything going and everything. See the people. See if the people you've been working with are still there. If you recognize them, right? You need to be aware of their peak season. So if you go there during their peak season and they're busy, it doesn't really mean anything. You need to compare apples to apples, right? How many people did they have in the peak season last year? Well, maybe they're busy now, but last year they were twice as busy, right? That's the kind of things you want to look at. It's very operational. You really need to be there and look at things. Otherwise, if you just look in the rear of your mirror, it gives you an idea about how fragile they are to a shock, to losing a key customer or something like that. But it doesn't really tell you much more than that. That's the problem, right? So that would be my answer to this question.
No, it makes sense. And in terms of traveling to China, I mean, we spoke about this a few weeks ago. It's accessible now. So there's not a lot of excuse for importers. You can totally get on a plane and come to China without much hassle these days. I would add, I suppose, if we're having doubts about our supplier and maybe we're looking at the due diligence and we've got concerns, it might be important to reassess your manufacturing agreement with them, if you've got one, which hopefully you do, because one thing that might be worth mentioning is like things like your tooling, like your molds and whatever, because you don't want to end up with them retaining the molds, or even worse, maybe selling them off for scrap or something to get money when you're trying to transition to a new manufacturer, because you probably would prefer not to have to include fabricating brand new molds in the cost of doing that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, right. So it depends on your situation, yes. If you have tooling there and they close, basically, it's very hard for you to get it back, right? It might be sold for scrap, which is crazy, I know. you don't want yourself to go there, because in some cases the employees are really pissed and they want to get money from anything. Oh, a customer is probably owing money to the company. Let's sort of kidnap the customer. Let's force him to stay in the office. He cannot get out until he sends some money to the company, and we can grab that money to pay all the employees. So don't go there, right? That's really the key, I would say.
Okay.
The first.
I mean, that's an extreme example.
It happened. It happened.
Yeah.
When people are mad and the bus ran away, and people come in the morning and they find everything closed and so on, and they get the local government. Local government also is going to be pissed, very very upset about that, and they're going to do whatever they can to keep the employees sort of happy. That's the situation.
Yes. Oh dear. Yeah. Okay. That's a good one, and definitely quite topical at the moment. But I guess we'd all agree that doing regular due diligence is definitely a benefit. So that's a good one to remember. The last question that we're covering today, then, number 4. This listener said, the products I receive keep breaking. How do I control quality?
Yeah, that's a question we get actually several times a month. So people see their products arriving. Usually they don't do inspections or anything before shipment. And they say, well, it keeps breaking, or it stops working, or it starts to emit a bit of smoke, or, things like that. Or it makes like a noise after a while, And then they say, well, it's poor quality, right? Because the product's no good, right? It's a quality problem, right? And I tell them, wait a minute, from what you're telling me, this is not related to the manufacturing process and quality. If this happens on 10%, 20%, 30% of the product, or half the product, these kinds of products of problems that are just mentioned, it's a reliability issue. It's related to the product design very often, right? It's I don't know, the components are overrated, so after a while they start to malfunction, they stop working, they heat up too much, maybe the wrong types of materials are used, so they break too easily in the way the product is used, or anything. There can be a very long list of reasons, but the key is the product themselves. At the end of the line, of the production line, their quality might be perfect, exactly as per the specifications. But the problem is that you're actually making a product that is itself, by its design, not able to satisfy the users, in the way they use the product. It's gonna fail after a while, or very quickly. Okay, so if it fails very, very quickly, like first time you use, clack, something breaks, usually this is more about a quality problem. But if it's a few weeks into it, or a few months and so on, it becomes more and more likely to be a reliability issue. So the question here is what to do. The first thing to do is to actually analyze the kind of problems. So you've done, unwittingly, you've done a lot of reliability testing, by simply releasing the product onto the users. Usually it's much better to do that in a lab, right? Usually we do that in our lab, and we try to accelerate the life of the product, or to put it under a certain stress and so on and so forth, do certain things repeatedly to see how it's going to fare in these conditions. But you did it like as a live test on users. Okay, so you get the feedback, okay, get the data, get the main failure modes, how they break, get some samples, definitely. And then, the first step is to analyze that, to see what the main issues are, right? And then look at the design. Look at the design and say, okay, this part here maybe is the wrong type of plastic. This component is not adapted to this, whatever, right? oh yeah, these kind of vibrations in the way it's used are breaking this soldering, whatever, right? Try to understand what the issues are and where they come from. And then, yeah, work with the manufacturer to maybe change some of the components, work with the engineers who did the design to evolve the design, to adjust it so that these main issues are addressed. And then you don't do just a test by sending it to users again, right? Then you test in a lab, right? You do a general battery of tests that is appropriate to your product and to the way it's going to be used. Who's going to use it in what environment, how often, for how long, right? And what about the common kind of maybe misuse, maybe not abuse? You might not need to test for abuse, except if there's some real safety considerations, if it's for kids, for example,
Yes.
and so on. But otherwise, how is it supposed to be used? How can I foresee that it's going to be used? And what are some of the edge cases, or what are the power users going to be likely to do with the product and so on? And then you test based on that, and then you confirm, all right, now with the new design adjustments, it's fine. We can go into production with this new design, or we have a problem. We have to go back to design, make some changes, and then again test, right? So if it's a cheap giveaway kind of promotional product, nobody really cares, right? But if it's a relatively expensive product, and most importantly, if the product supports a sort of a mission critical process, it cannot fail. If it's a medical device, for example, that's maybe implanted, to keep your heart pumping or something like that, of course, reliability is extremely important, right? So you have these two. It's a continuum, right? Where is your product? What is the need here for your product, right? And you need to have an appropriate plan for ensuring reliability in your product based on what the exact needs are, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and there's so much that we've discussed and written about.
Yeah.
Testing for quality and reliability. So I think the best way to share that information is to leave some links in the show notes, as I always do. And,
right.
Anyone listening can go a lot deeper into it. And of course, if you need help with quality inspections, this is one of our key services. I mean, that's definitely a way that you can reach out to us. So that's 4 good questions today. I like it. And thanks for sending them in. If I can add something just very, very quickly, because at the moment right now, I'm sitting in China. I'm heading back soon, but I've been in China for a bit. You mentioned visiting China to check on suppliers earlier.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that when we spoke about our observations for China before, we talked about payments, right? But recently, I think starting this month, July 2023, you're able to link your foreign bank card to WeChat wallet and make the online payments. And you can also link foreign bank cards to Alipay. From my own personal experience, and I'm sure you would agree, Renaud, if you are traveling to China to visit your suppliers, do not try to pay with cash. You're going to need to pay with online payments using the apps, right?
Cash is gone.
So you've got to do that before you leave your country. Link up your bank card with those online wallets so you can make online payments in China.
Yes, absolutely. This is a massive improvement for people coming, because when you don't have WeChat, Alipay, so then you're always hostage basically to the manufacturer. You tell them, hey, so you get to the airport, whatever, you go to your hotel, you can't even take a DD, which is the local Uber or anything like that. Then you ask for your manufacturer, hey, can you come and pick me up? And can you bring me there? And so on. You're not really free to do whatever you want, right? So it's always a bit of, so it's kind of convenient to just rely on other people and say, hey, arrange the driver to pick me up here and so on and so forth, until the driver has some kind of issue and is very late, of course. But if you're free to go around, if you have the DD app, what I mentioned, sort of the Uber equivalent. And by the way, I was told you can have it in English. Okay, I don't even know how to set it up, but I saw some people use it in English, so it's easier for people, obviously, than in the Chinese interface. And you link it to WeChat, to Alipay, and you pay the taxi rides with that. From within Alipay, and I believe also WeChat, you can just pay for the metro rides, and then you can pay for the high-speed train. Okay, that's another system that's a little bit more complicated here to do it on your phone, but it opens up a lot of possibilities. With a bit of trial and error, and hopefully someone to help you, you can set up a lot of things. Right, so that's really that makes a huge difference, because otherwise, you needed to have a Chinese local bank account, which, with the restriction, was much easier. I don't know, 10 years ago, but now setting a new one, not so easy.
No, not so easy. I guess if you come regularly, it's definitely something that you could look into. Actually, now that you mention this, I will hopefully be interviewing a Chinese business expert on things like that. So setting up bank accounts, remitting money back to your home country, about, the sorts of things that importers and manufacturers need to know about setting up and administering businesses in China, including bank accounts. So hopefully that will be coming in the coming weeks. So that's going to be super interesting as well. So anyway, we do digress, but I just thought it was worth mentioning in case somebody's now thinking, I think I will book flights and go and see my supplier. So yeah, totally do it, but don't try and pay in cash in China. Trust me, you'll thank me for the advice.
Yes, absolutely.
Great. Okay. So some cracking questions from our listeners today. If you've ever got more, you know where to find us. Go to the Sofeast website and contact us and send in your questions. But other than that, we will be back next week. Thanks, Renaud, and thanks everybody for listening.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Adrian.
Thanks again for listening to this podcast, brought to you by the Sofeast Group. We're on a mission to provide you with everything you need to manufacture effectively in Asia, including inspections, auditing, new product development support, contract manufacturing, 3PL warehousing and fulfillment, and much more across Asia's key manufacturing areas. Visit us at sofeast.com, that's SOFEAST.com, to learn more and get help. If you've enjoyed the podcast today, please do rate, review and share, because it will really help others discover us too.